As a fellow on-air personality, I know well that controversial commentary is often the life's blood of talk radio. A New York Times best-selling author, popular talk show host, and yet another Fox News contributor, our next speaker is a pretty electrifying political commentator. Please welcome her now, Tammy Bruce.
Hi there. It sounds tonight like Fox News kind of collects all of us who might get in trouble otherwise, right? Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank Jonathan and Cheryl Emord for making this possible. It's very impressive, and I mentioned to him at the beginning of this, indeed. Many of you are going to be getting some awards, which I've actually seen in the back, and they're very impressive. But you, sir, certainly deserve one, and certainly many. I'm sure you've won many as well. But it's, I just want to say thank you. And I do want to also mention, I saw a very young man in the back of the room. Normally I have to ask if there are children in the room and whether or not we need to get the swear jar out. But we won't have to do that this evening. And I'm a native Los Angelino, so the equivalent of us dressing up is putting on closed-toe shoes as opposed to our flip-flops. So it's really fabulous to see the tuxedos and the wonderful gowns. And there were some little girls out there, I don't know if they're in this room right now, who were princesses. Are they here? Or no, they're not in the room. Did all of you see those cute little kids? That's what gives me inspiration, is knowing that they're being raised by adults, by families who come to events like this and make this kind of a situation possible. I do come a little bit from the fringes. I am a native Los Angelino, grew up poor. I am the product of an affair. See, somebody already dropped something at that note. What can you do? My father was a bodyguard and enforcer for Bugsy Siegel. Obviously, he didn't do a very good job. Are there any other Italians in the room, just so I don't feel too lonely? Well, there you go. See, and we do feel wonderfully comfortable that there's a lawyer in the room, too, for some reason. And I tend to, perhaps it's genetic, I tend to not like authority very much. Now, it's better, of course, I've taken a political realm and speak against authority, which tends to grow bigger and bigger. And yet I love this country, of course, because I love the structure of it. It allows, my birthday was just about a week and a half ago, and it allows someone like me in the course of 52 years to go from a single-parent household with a mother who is on welfare to being able to cause a certain amount of trouble and not be arrested, and be able to enjoy being in a room with people like yourselves. My trajectory, though, was very interesting. I come from the left as well. So in addition to having some economic troubles and a mother who was, at some point in her life, an extended period of my childhood, addicted to Valium, and no father, I was pretty much an orphan in a way, always on my own. And so the argument on the left was very appealing. An argument about victimhood, an argument about you're owed things, an argument about the system doesn't like you, the system doesn't care for you, here will you be your family. And that's an appeal to many people. And I fell into that framework. I can say before, though, the very first president I could vote for was President Reagan. I was 18 years old. And there are some of you who are too young. I think you're a little bit too young to remember the transition, the inauguration day. All right. Well, for those of us who remember, I worked at a car wash during the gas lines. You remember, that, of course, the gas shortage. And I think I was 12 at the time. And one of my jobs at this car wash, which also had gas, and with the gas shortage, and the rules were that you could only go if you had on your license plate an odd or an even number on those days to get gas. How many of you remember doing that? Yeah, right? My job at 12 was to go down the line of those waiting to get the gas and it was usually men, who were there on the wrong day because they wouldn't hit a little kid. If you sent an adult out, a fight would begin. Men, though, I would watch men at 12 begin to cry because they had a job to get to and they needed the gas and they couldn't be in the line. That was my very first education at that age, of seeing the nature of what was transpiring. I remember also that everyone was wondering, is gas going to hit $1 a gallon? Remember that conversation? Is gas going to hit $1 a gallon? And the very strange attitude of a president, my family was a mix of Republicans and Democrats. I'm an independent. I tend to look funny at things, very large, organized things like political parties. I was a Democrat, though, up until 2008. Now, I'm not a Republican, but I'm a conservative. And it comes from that kind of an experience of seeing the impact of policies and weakness in men and women in office that destroy individual lives, that are so removed from this beltway, from those who are the political class, that they don't even consider it. It's a kind of malignant narcissism, as I've termed it, where there's an inability to see narcissism. It's not that you think you're great. Narcissism is the notion that everything that happens because of you or surrounds you. And it's the inability to consider other people in the decisions that you make or whether or not it's affecting other people, and to not care if it's a negative because other people don't matter. Does that sound perhaps familiar in today's political scene as well? Yeah. So you're dealing with a president who's a malignant narcissist, where I'm a productive narcissist. And you can be a benign narcissist. I'm not necessarily benign, but I'm a productive one. And it's something that actually starts in childhood. And it begins when, as all of you have children, the constant facing of your child and the gazing at them, it allows them to construct their ego, right? It's this, that everything literally does surround them, that every time they look up, somebody hopefully is lovingly looking down at them. But if you have someone like myself, where no adult was necessarily always around, or a Barack Obama who had been abandoned by both of his parents, and somewhat neglected also by his grandparents, the ego then turns to itself for attention. And then, since you don't have others looking to you establishing your ego, so suddenly you're looking inward, and it never reverses itself. So that's a psychological dynamic that follows you through life. And it can manifest in simple things like somebody cuts you off on the road, and you think, oh, they cut you off. They meant to cut you off. Or someone scoots into your parking space, right? Oh, they did that to me, okay? So these are things to watch out for and to recognize. It gets, of course, quite toxic when you're the President of the United States, and everything does have to be about you. Whether it's, he's in Wales at the NATO summit, and he's, of course, because there's really nothing to do at a NATO summit with the condition of the world, he visited Stonehenge. Yeah, he visited Stonehenge, and he commemorated it with a picture of himself at Stonehenge, as opposed to just Stonehenge. This speaks to something. When a man finds the time, when the world's on fire, to leave the one group that might be able to make a difference, to go take a picture of himself at a monument. I know that many of you here would, of course, we all would think if we were president, that we might handle things differently, because this isn't necessarily difficult. So for my upbringing, and I mention this because I was on the left for quite some time, and you've heard some great speakers, and Isabel Buchanan was here, and is she still here? Okay. It's interesting because being able to vote for President Reagan twice, I remind myself that I was right from the beginning, even though I did stray. And I strayed, though, and my politics really haven't changed. My commitment has always been, as I think most Americans are, that I want to live the life that best suits me. I want government to leave me alone. I don't want people to make who I am illegal. I hate seeing what was happening with the gas lines. It was like I knew that we needed something. Ultimately, Washington had something to do with what was making grown men cry, and it wasn't right and it wasn't fair. And so I became the president of the National Organization for Women in Los Angeles and was on their national board. I know, so lock the doors at this point, don't worry. Jonathan has not lost his mind. Do not worry. And that remained my commitment. But throughout my time there, I don't know, are there any, this might not be a group that, I know there's a lot of doctors in the room. Any psychotherapists in the room? Because, excellent. Psychotherapy helped me get through being on the left and being able to emerge. Truly. In all seriousness, it's about self-reflection and always asking questions. Ultimately, what I realized and what moved me from the left was the feminist reaction to Bill Clinton. He was the epitome of what we had been fighting against. And when that abuse of that 20-year-old in the Oval Office, we'd given him a pass, and whatever he was doing with actresses in Georgetown was not our business. And he was doing plenty. But he needed to be caught. He needed to be caught. Feminists rallied to his side. And I was on the air at KFI at the time. I've been on talk radio for about 20 years now. And on the air, it was just too much, because it was the antithesis of what it was we were to be standing for, which was not about partisan politics, and I was a Democrat at the time, but about really improving the quality of people's lives. And as a feminist, women's lives. When women's lives improve, everyone's lives improve. This is the argument also for the Islamic world. There's a reason why they put Muslim women in potato sacks. There's a reason why they don't let them vote. There's a reason why they don't let them own businesses. There's a reason why they don't let them leave the house. Because a woman who is powerful and independent changes the world, and those men know it. Now, if we were really going to change the Muslim world, you do it very simply. Empower the women in that world. Women raise the children. Women, in being able to decide and make a difference, would raise little boys differently. And they know it. That's the key. But for me, in growing up and seeing the children here in this event, and knowing what the future holds, and hearing, of course, all of us know the difficulties that we're facing. And I want to give you, my point tonight will be to give you some insight about why this is happening and what you can do about it. And it's very simple and it's very personal. When I was on the left, the goal was, and this is where I also realized something was not quite right, the goal was not to win the arguments with conservatives, not to win the argument with you, but to frighten you. It is not a byproduct of what's happening in the country. It is the strategy. The strategy is for you to retreat. Okay? If you retreat, the left doesn't have to win the argument. And this is where my first book was about the new thought police, the words that are used against you. Bay spoke about being called a racist. Kate has. Has everyone, if you've been called a racist, raise your hand. You know, some of you are obviously in business, so you're a little bit more careful than some of us. Here's a simple piece of advice. Those words, racist, sexist, and homophobe, perhaps you've heard a couple of the other two, are meant to injure you because you're decent. The left knows of your decency. They know, and you, Kate, explained it, I think, quite well, the shock at hearing something, because you take those things seriously, and they know it. They don't really believe that you're a racist, sexist, or a homophobe, but they know that it'll injure you. So this is my technique. I mentioned this also to the CPAC crowd in as many groups as I can. When someone calls you a racist, sexist, or a homophobe, imagine that you've been called a Cocker Spaniel. Because it is as relevant. If someone came up to you and called you a Cocker Spaniel, would you suddenly look to find that cute little tail? Would you feel for the ears? Would you wonder? Of course you wouldn't, because that person's nuts. Now, if I was going to be a dog, I'd want to be, I don't know, a German Shepherd, I suppose, so I'd be insulted. But you wouldn't automatically think, oh, because, you know, that leftist or that liberal called me a Cocker Spaniel, maybe it's true. Or I've got to take stock of what I've said because maybe it genuinely, nobody's feelings are hurt. In the meetings that I attended on the left, there was laughter about the public response to the names that are being called. That also, of course, took me aback. And it was, well, it's the ends justifies the means. The ends justifies the means, Tammy. I was also critiqued by Steinem and Maillard and several others when I complained that many of the things we were doing was making things worse. And it was explained to me that we needed to rub salt into the wound because if we did too well, we wouldn't be there in the future when we'd be needed again. So the argument was, don't succeed. Imagine that in your businesses, to not do well because, you know, eventually you might be needed later and so you'd still need to be there. My goal was to organize ourselves out of business. But that also was apparent. A lot of people were getting rich and very powerful. And so the energy went into not constructing arguments that could make an argument either in court or in a business or on television, but it was to silence you. And of course, the media facilitates this and helps it along. You are decent people, so it has an impact. It has to be a deliberate decision on your part to not allow that tactic to work. You must not question your own morality or what you've already accomplished. A couple of women came up to me at a conservative gathering and said, you know, this was before my speech, and said, we should just give up, stop trying to fight for the moral high ground. And I said, wait a minute. There is only one group of people on the moral high ground, and that's conservatives. In the 21st century, if you are still a liberal, something is wrong with you, okay? Now, if I, having been leadership on the left, can find my way out and recognize that my principles remain the same and that it has been hijacked by the left, if you are a thinking adult, or if you are even a young person who you can see everything that's going on, Barack Obama's proven certain things are not working, there is something wrong with you. And of course, I don't know, perhaps only someone on the left can make that accusation, but it's true. So when you talk about giving up the moral high ground or thinking that, well, maybe the world does need to change, or maybe I need to change, or maybe something's wrong with my business, that's it's you know, you've been manipulated. It's called brainwashing. They mean to move you off of your spot because they can't get there naturally. Now, Mike, I've got a column at the Washington Times. It's a pleasure to meet Cheryl Chumley, who's going to be speaking a little bit, one of my colleagues there as well. My column on Monday is about Obama as the anti-Bush, right? That Obama's entire approach is about doing the opposite of what Bush would do, not doing what George Bush would do, getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan, not bombing terrorists, not facing the real world. And what have we seen happen? The world's on fire. Obama, by default, has proven the correctness of George W. Bush. He has proven that America has been right all along because of the condition of the world by doing the opposite of George W. Bush. It couldn't be more clear. That's the Monday column. And what I reflect on when I think of that as a former liberal is the notion that Obama and the left truly believe that America was the problem. They truly believed that George W. Bush was the issue. And the reason they do that is because they're projecting. They're projecting their own self-loathing. They're projecting their own sense of not being correct or not being worthy on the nation as a whole. And then, of course, you have people in business, entrepreneurs, lawyers, people who are successful, people in the middle class who have worked hard, and you become representative of the parents or the structure that has let them down. And they're operating in a worldview of simple negativity constantly. Conservatives have answers and look to the future with ideas. The left look to the future as a problem and with what not to be or with what not to become or with who not to be, right? That was the difference. And I'm going to contradict a little bit on Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was right about everything, wasn't he? That was a man that was right about everything. I was not a fan of his at the beginning, and I hope to God now that he does run again. I do. I heard this big sigh over there. No, I do. I want you to imagine, of all the people who've already proven international policy was supposed to be his weak point, and he got it all right. He got it all right. And I think that there is I should have put on my timer. I talk on the radio for 2 hours a day nonstop because I'm Scottish as well. And it usually takes me 30 minutes just to say hello. So I'm going to look here at my watch. It's true. What do I have? Another 15, 20? Another hour? What do we have there? All right. I'm going to put it up here in 20 minutes here. And then you can wave at me when I need to go. So for me, in looking at what's happening in the world, and also always being in rooms with conservatives who you maintain your decency, but you're also concerned and you're still injured by names and by accusations. So not only do you need to deliberately choose to not entertain that argument, you need to realize that turning the other cheek is also now not the right thing to do. There is something larger than you at stake. And normally you would say, well, there's a lot of rhetoric about, oh, there's not going to be another election like what's coming up. The fact of the matter is, for all of us who remember Jimmy Carter and the transition, and then, the things that can happen, the fact of the matter is we are now in a nuclear world with a terrorist army of perhaps now between 50 to 70,000 individuals who have our equipment, who have access now to the oil fields and to the airports of Libya, who are near Iran, who will get the nuclear bomb because Barack Obama perhaps wants them to have it. And I don't see how the world will survive that unless something is done. And for you, and when it comes to the issue of theory, this is now past even your own family and yourselves. Every American generation, as we celebrate George Washington tonight and the anniversary of a law firm, of a nation that's based in the rule of law, and yet we have a president and a system that seems to think that law just does not matter. And yet, thank God, there is the rule of law. Thank God there are the courts, so that we can help, continue to push back against what's happening here. But as individuals, and especially individuals associated with businesses that know the eMord firm, that need lawyers, that recognize the value of your businesses, the political ramifications and social ramifications of your businesses, we're now at a point where there is no second chance. This is, I know, not a political gathering, and you'll forgive me, but if in November the Senate is not taken by Republicans, and if in 2016 we suddenly have President Clinton again, we're in trouble, and it doesn't go back. This is the one chance we have. And I think that for people like you, and we can reflect back on the founders, that it's always been groups even smaller than the number of you in this room that have initiated revolutions, that have changed nations. It is not an entire nation that does it. It's people who understand what has transpired. It's people like Jonathan who decide, yes, let's regenerate that feeling of 1776. It's individuals who decide that they want to make the difference. Normally we decide that for ourselves, right? For you, what's important is for you to understand the house of cards that the left is built on. Because, like it or not, the world does require us, right? We could retreat, and we see what happens when we retreat. The bottom line is that for the left, there's a reason why they constantly have you underfoot, constantly with the boot on you, is because they don't want you to realize that there's no there, okay? The moment you realize that look, being called a name is unpleasant, but you'll survive it. It is the only thing that they have in their arsenal. It is the only thing that Obama has operated with as well. And I think that for the point of view when it comes to why you do what you do, and the commitment that you make as entrepreneurs and as business people, you're the ones who make the difference as deciding to not let the left prevail. You're the ones who are able to, whether it's within your own family, within your business, the other companies you support, the politicians you support, you're the ones who decide. And it is about coming and having this kind of fellowship, experiencing, listening to a variety of people. And for the minorities in the room also, normally my speeches are about the conservative ideal and its benefit to minorities. And that's because this is about personal freedom. And personal freedom only comes with financial freedom, doesn't it? As long as you're reliant on the government or on anyone else to be able to pay your rent or pay your mortgage or be able to live your life as the government now has set up with your health care, then you are beholden to them. You're not truly free, are you? And the only, especially for minorities, the only way we are truly free, I'm a gay woman, is to have financial freedom so that we can live where we want to live. You can send your children to the schools you want to send them to, yet you're in a relationship because you want to be, not because you have to be. This is where it works. The left, majority of Americans now who have gotten jobs have gotten part-time jobs. They're like my mother, who worked 2 jobs and still did not make enough money. So my sister and I started working. Like I said, I was 12 and working at a car wash. Those are the kinds of lives they want us to return to, because then you have no time, energy, or money to contribute to the political and cultural framework of your lives. Businesses collapse, you become reliant on the state. There's a reason they want that, and not because it's good for you, but because it guarantees their futures and their jobs. Lawyers are a special threat, right? Your companies that perhaps understand that you don't want the government intervening in your company, you are special threats. That's where regulations move through, and that's what government wants to do, is put a block on you. Not because, again, it helps, but because it serves their purposes. So for me, it comes down to a couple of things. the issue of leadership, not only with a president, which we obviously need, persuasion amongst your own company, your friends, your extended family, the nature of your business and knowing the importance of your business as entrepreneurs, and also remembering that split screen during the Reagan inauguration, right, of the hostages being let go as President Reagan was being inaugurated. That's all it takes, because the next 2 years are going to be even more difficult than the last 5. Because you have a malignant narcissist in a narcissistic collapse because of what happened with Obamacare and his entire regime. They are truly overwhelmed. And unless we have a Senate and a House that will stop him, starting in November, actually it would be January, it will still be pretty bad. So your commitment and focus will make the difference. So just remember, it's not about even another generation of changing policies or politicians. One individual can make the difference because of the impression that it gives the rest of the world. You think a Mitt and an Ann Romney coming in to be inaugurated might frighten the Iranians a little bit more than anyone on the lineup right now? I think so. Or even a Romney-Walker ticket sounds rather appealing as well. So there are things that in the moment it occurs, the bad actors in the world, and I'm getting the signal right here, the bad actors in the world are already rushing to do what they need to do because they know they've got 2 more years. And politicians here are doing the same thing. So it will get worse. Barack Obama's not going to change, but he can be put in his place by a Congress that understands that presidents are not kings. And that if you are going to be a king, you should at least know what it is you're doing and not be overwhelmed. So as a former leftist and as a current conservative and as somebody in media, I just want to reinforce again the vital importance of a room like this, of individuals like yourselves, in making the biggest difference in the world. It's not us who are on television or on radio who you hear from. It's the nature of your frame of mind, your children's frame of mind, and the choices you make. And one last thing. The choices you make on the issues: amnesty, education, Obamacare, the economy, business regulations. You don't have to do it all. Choose. Other people are interested in perhaps the issues you're not interested in. Don't feel overwhelmed. Choose the issue that matters to you most. Look at it that way, and we will get through this together. It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you all very much.